Alright guys, welcome back to the video. So in this one we're going to be building a fairly simple shaker style chair. Now this one is also coming from the How to Build Shaker Furniture book. Again, you can check this out on my website under the library section, so you can find it there with all the information about it. So the chair we're going to be building here is again a very simple chair. Basically it's got made from 4 round posts with a whole bunch of little stretchers going between them. Now what I really like about this chair design is that it's fairly simple and it's mostly done on the lathe. Then our slats are going to be made using some steam bending. So I still haven't figured out the trick behind steam bending just yet, but I figure if I have a project, if I have components that are meant to have a steam bent component mixed into them, I think that it'll be a lot easier to figure out the whole idea behind it. Because I have a rough idea of how to do it, I just need to have something to actually try fitting it into. Okay, so we've got a minor hiccup. I went to start trying to fit up some of these spindles here, and as you can see, these two nicely snapped on me. So it's not actually because of the weakness in the spindles, it's because I over-torqued them. So on my two back posts here, this one hole right in the middle here is off angle. So the other 12 holes that I drilled using the drill press are all perfectly aligned. Everything came together well. As you can see from the front of the seat there, everything lined up nicely. That's a nice square joint. Whereas when I put the back legs together with the spindles in there, they were slightly skewed, so I thought I could just rotate them slightly, and I ended up snapping both the top and the bottom spindle there. And so there's really no way to save these the way that they are now. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to fill all of these holes with some epoxy, just some quick 5-minute epoxy, and just see if that hardens these up enough that I can go back in and try to re-drill these holes. So the problem that I have now is I can't actually re-drill out these holes, because if you've ever tried putting a brad point bit into end grain, you know that it has a tendency to do weird things, especially when you have a spot like this where it's end grain surrounded by just normal straight grain. The bit has nothing really to guide itself properly on, because the end grain just kind of moves out of the way. Alright guys, so I think I'm going to call this chair a pretty quick failure here. I managed to fill these original mortise holes with some epoxy. They seem pretty solid, but when I was doing a little bit more research and trying to figure out how the heck I'm going to continue on with this chair, I realized that my mortises are completely in the wrong spot. They're the completely wrong angle. All this stuff about them is just the wrong way to do it. Because the way that I have these mortises set up right now is they're at the same angle as our spindles would be. So these are going directly straight across the back, whereas our mortises, when we have those curved back pieces, they can't be at the same angle as the spindles here. Now, one potential way to proceed here would be to fill this last hole that I didn't fill initially, and then just figure out what angle they need to be at. But the problem is I have no idea how to figure out that angle, and from all these different resources that I'm kind of cobbling together here, everyone says that you just kind of get the base area of the chair together, then you go back in and you individually lay out all your mortises and that for any of your top stuff. Any of your curved pieces all need to be individually laid out, just because there's a ton of variation in it. And I kind of see why people say that, because I have these two different pieces that I tried to steam bend. One is 3/8 of an inch, one is 1/2 an inch, and they were formed basically on the same shape. But there is a slight difference to them. But what you can do if you're laying these things out individually is you can make up for whatever differences there are there. You can cut it a little bit shorter. You can, make your tenon a little bit longer than it should be. All that kind of stuff, and you can lay out the specific angle that these are meant to line up with those mortises there. And so it makes a lot more sense now that I've done a little bit more research that all that kind of stuff you don't want to add in right now, you want to add that in later on. And the other problem that I have with this chair so far is the spindles. I do not like how they're coming out, because what I tried to do, and was somewhat successful on the lathe, is I cut this tenon on the end here. Now the tenon part is pretty much perfect on all of them. They're a little bit over 1/2 inch, which means I can go in with some sandpaper, touch them up a little bit, and get a nice friction fit. And in most cases, they fit in these mortises quite lovely. They're just pressure fit in, and they hold together pretty well, as you can see from that front area there. The problem with them is just the visual aspect that is really annoying me. Now, obviously, when you're learning a new skill, the visual part of it shouldn't be that big of a deal, but for me it is, and the reason is because I know that I could do it a lot better. So what I wanted to do here is I wanted to have the 1/2 inch part at the end here, and then I wanted it to taper up nicely to the 7/8 thick main area of this spindle here. Now, the problem is that all of these different spindles are just totally different. And what I'm finding is that it isn't just a visual issue, it's actually becoming an issue when I'm trying to put the stuff together and fit things up, because I can't tell how far the spindle is going into the mortise properly when I have things together. So things are coming out skewed, and it's all around just not working great. And so in some of the research I've done, I found a free set of plans on the Fine Woodworking website for a simple shaker rocking chair. And so what I'm going to be doing in my next attempt at making a shaker style chair is I'm just going to be taking some of the measurements from these free plans from Fine Woodworking and combining them with the plans from the book that I have. Because the trick here is that the book gives me a chair, a very simple chair with a seat, straight legs, all this kind of stuff. It's a much simpler construction compared to this rocking chair. But the problem is that the book is missing out on a few key dimensions and angles in that I need to understand how to lay this stuff out. Whereas the plans give me specific angles. So I know that on my front post, they need to be at a 100-degree angle from each other. And on the back post, the spindles are going to be at an 80-degree angle from each other. So knowing that, I can actually set that up on my drill press. And when I set these legs up in a jig, which is also going to be a big thing in the next attempt, and I want to make sure that I have very specific angles set up in these legs. That way, when I'm drilling those holes, they're a lot more accurate. Because what I did wrong here is I just kind of went for it. I marked a center line on the leg and just tried to drill my holes freehand, and obviously that ended up screwing things up. Now, one thing that is worth mentioning, if you are a fan of shaker style chairs, you're probably wondering why I'm not adding the finale thing. I don't know what it's called, but the little acorn thing at the top of the chair. The main reason for that is I just don't quite want to deal with that yet. I think it's a really interesting touch, but I just don't know if I want to try messing around with getting that shaping and all that. Right now, I just want to focus on getting a structure together so I can start working with steam bending and, kind of putting all of these different puzzle pieces together. So in the next video, we'll talk a little bit more in depth about the chair that I'm going to be using, some of the dimensions and that we're going to be bringing in from these different plans that I'm kind of putting together. And then from there, we'll go and try to make something a little bit different.